adding integers is the next section, section 1.5 in your book. And after today's video, you should be able to say the following statement. I can follow the sign rules to add integers correctly. Your sign rules are pretty simple for adding integers. Alright? You either have the same sign or you have two numbers with different signs. For example, if I'm adding, alright, and I have a negative number and a negative number, okay, regardless of what the number is, those are same signed numbers. And what you're going to do is you're going to add the numbers and keep the signs. If the two numbers have different signs, so again I'm adding, let's say I have a positive number in front and a negative number in back, alright, what I'm going to do is subtract the smaller from the larger and then keep the sign of the larger number. And really, to be technical here, when we say subtract the smaller from the larger, we're talking about absolute values of those numbers, okay? So keep that in mind, alright, as we're looking at this. We're going to ignore the negative sign for a second, alright, and see, okay, which one of these is bigger, and then go ahead and do what the rule tells me to do. So even though it's addition, alright, notice that even in addition, we are subtracting, because that's the rule we're going to follow. Alright, now down here you see this thing for general rules, and basically it's kind of what I just did, but we're going to put an answer with it. So when we're adding two positive numbers together, we expect our answer to be positive. When we're adding two negative numbers together, our answer is going to be negative. That's the keep the sign part of that. Alright? When it comes to different signs, if I'm adding a positive with a negative, I really don't know what my answer is going to be, whether it's positive or negative. Alright? And the same is true if I flip that. Alright? It all depends on which is bigger, and we'll talk about that as we go. Okay? So let's take a look at some examples. Alright? Before we actually do some calculations, alright, let's just simply figure out, without doing any work, if our answer is going to be positive or negative. Alright? So notice first of all, these are all addition problems. Okay? This is important to keep in mind. Alright? We're adding in every one of these. Tomorrow we'll learn about subtraction, and that's going to change it. Well, it's going to add a rule. Okay? So, which one's bigger? And again, we're talking absolute value only. 8 or 2? 8 is bigger, 8 is positive, this is going to be positive. Alright? Which is bigger? 6 or 5? 6 is bigger, it's negative, our answer is going to be a negative. Same sign, we're told to keep the sign. So you really don't have to look at which one's bigger or smaller. Okay? And then D, we have different signs, so we look at which one's bigger. 5 and 5, they're the same size, so I already know this answer is going to be 0 without even doing any calculations. Okay? Because a negative and a positive, if they're opposites, they're going to cancel out and be 0. Alright. Now let's do the actual calculations. Okay? Example 2 tells us to find the sum. And we ask a simple question, what does sum mean? What sum means is it's the answer in addition. Alright, so when you're asked to find a sum, you're being asked to find the answer with adding a couple numbers together or more. Alright, so looking at 8. First thing I'm going to ask myself is, do I have the same sign or different signs? Right, these are different signs. So, I'm going to subtract the smaller from the larger. I am not going to pay attention to any signs when I do this. We're talking absolute values only. Alright, so I subtract the absolute values of those two numbers, and I get 5. Then I say, okay, we know 10's bigger, 10's positive, so my answer is positive. You don't need to write a positive sign when your answer is positive. Alright, moving on to B. Once again, we see a positive 6 and a negative 6. Those are the same but opposite, so they're going to take each other away. 0. Alright, looking at C. I have different signs. I'm going to ignore the signs for a second. I'm going to subtract the absolute values. Then I'm going to go back and say which one of these is bigger. Okay, the 12 is bigger than 5. 12 is negative, so my answer is negative. Alright. Do the numbers and do the signs separate. You could do the signs first if you want, kind of like we did up in the previous example, where we kind of determined if it was going to be positive or negative first. You could write that down, or you could do it at the end, or you could do it both times just to check yourself. D, we have the same sign. So I'm going to add the two numbers together, and I'm going to keep the sign. Okay? So again, when it comes to adding integers, two very simple rules you need to follow. Okay? First thing you're going to do is look to see if you have the same sign or if you have different signs. If you have the same sign, you're going to add the numbers and keep the signs. If you have different signs, you're going to subtract the smaller from the larger and keep the sign a larger number. And again, when I keep saying smaller and larger, I'm talking about absolute values. Okay? All right. Two more examples to go. All right, where we have to do a little bit of translating here. So it says you took an elevator from the 3rd floor up 15 floors to see a friend, and then went down 9 floors to see another friend. All right, what floor are you on? Well, when we look at this, we're starting on the 3rd floor. Up is a positive number, as we saw yesterday, so we're going to go up 15 floors. Okay, and that will give us 18. Then we're going to go down. Down's a negative number, or you could do subtraction if you want. Same thing. All right, we're going to go down 9 floors, and that'll get us down to the 9th floor. So what floor are you on? I am on the 9th floor. One of the things you're going to learn with word problems is you can't just answer them with a number. You have to be descriptive with your answers and what it represents. All right, last example here. It says you have $800 in the bank. You spend $75 on shoes and $18 on a hat, and then you babysit and make $15. How much money do you have? Well, one thing you could do is put your positives together and your negatives together first. All right, so 815 is obviously 815. These are my positives. Now let me do my negatives. All right, so I have 75 and 18. All right. And we end up with 93. Okay. Now, you can look at that as this is a negative number. All right. This is a positive number. I'm looking to combine those two. Combining is another way of saying adding. So, I'm going to use my sign rules. I have different signs, so I'm going to subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. All right. There's 2. I'm going to have to borrow from here. Another 2 and a 7. All right, and then we keep the sign of the bigger number. All right, this is positive, and for those of you to think, oh, positive, negative really doesn't matter. Well, I'd rather have $722 than owe someone $722. To me, that's a big deal. It's a big amount of money here. All right, so we could say, how much money do we have? I have $722 left over. All right. Final thing you have to do, keep in mind, always on every video, is you're going to answer the following statements. After watching this video, I now can do, and whatever it is you've learned about this video. Alright? And then after watching this video, I still don't know how to. If you're shaky with the sign rules, or finding absolute value still, write it down, and then again, circle one of the things you're going to do to try to help yourself learn that. See you tomorrow in class.